we'd like some bum bum bing, thank you. Oh,
This is making me so hungry.
Now, no matter where you travel in Australia, there is bound to be the trusty Chinese takeaway. David Chan is attempting to give any Chinese restaurant in the world a go, at least once, Sammy.
As are most of us. The lawyer, who can't use chopsticks, has eaten at more than 6,000 Chinese restaurants, and he's hungry for more. The third-generation Chinese-American joins us now live from Los Angeles. David, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Growing up, you apparently hated Chinese food. Is that true?
That is correct, yes.
And how come the change of heart?
Well, what happened is that obviously there are a number of factors involved, but really what changed is the food. Because when I was a kid growing up in the 50s and 60s, almost all the Chinese here in the United States were from Toisan, which was a very small rural area in southern China. And all the Chinese food in the United States was Toisanese food. The people from Toisan were rural, unsophisticated people. The food wasn't very good. So basically what was known, at least in the United States for 100 years, as Chinese food was really something that most people in China would not recognize.
Well, that's really interesting, yeah, because in Australia, I mean, our traditional Chinese, pardon me, is Cantonese, so you get lots of very sweet dishes, you know, your honey chickens and things.
Yeah, actually, Toisan is a rural area of outside of Canton, and I believe that the Chinese who immigrated from China to Australia were also Toisanese.
Right.
But what happened in the United States, because of the exclusion laws for 80 years, most Chinese were not able to immigrate from China to the United States. So the only ones here in the U.S. were the Toisanese. And then what happened in the mid-60s, the United States changed their immigration laws. This permitted Chinese from, you know, all over the world to come to the United States. And so starting in the mid-60s, they had Chinese from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and other areas come to the United States, and that led to a vast improvement in the Chinese food, and I think that's why I started to eat the food.
And in vast improvement in crime solving in Hawaii, because remember Stephen McGarrett's offsider was Chin Ho.
That's right. But that's getting onto another tangent. David, let's talk about what you've done here. You have documented all of your eating experiences since 1955 into an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
What just tell us.
Why?
Well, no, I don't want to ask why, but where would you recommend? What was your favourite?
I guess in the period where a lot of really authentic Chinese restaurants started to open up in the United States, there was one called ABC Seafood that opened up in Chinatown, Los Angeles. And it was really the first great, authentic Hong Kong-style restaurant to open in Los Angeles.
How fantastic. And so was that a revelation to you and you thought, oh, must have more?
Well, it was actually gradual, because what had happened is that, like I said, starting in the late 60s, you had the Chinese immigrants come over. So Chinese food was gradually improving in the United States over that period of time. And then I started to make the acquaintance of some of these people from Hong Kong. They came over to the U.S. as foreign students. They decided to stay. They became my co-workers, and they kind of introduced me to their style of food.
Okay. So, so how do you judge this food? What's the process for rating it?
Well, okay, I guess I need to make a disclaimer. I'm not a foodie. I don't take pictures of my food.
Good.
My kids, you know, they take pictures of their meals. They post it on Facebook or Flickr or whatever. That's not where I came from. I'm more of a food observer, because I was initially interested primarily in the experience of Chinese people in the United States, and Chinese food was just one part of it.
So would you, you know, in the States, do they have the sort of classic Western Chinese dishes, you know, your sang chow bao and your wo ti pa and your chicken chow mein and all that sort of thing? Or is there something that is more, in some ways, authentic, I suppose?
Well, okay, until the 50s or 60s, that's really, you're describing a lot of Toisanese-based dishes. And then in the last, 50 years or so, then because you've had the immigration from China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, all these places, then you really have lots of authentic Chinese food in the large Chinese communities. But then if you go into the hinterlands or cities where there aren't a lot of Chinese, you still see a lot of maybe not chop suey, but you know, wonton.
I mean, not that it's not authentic; it's just
stuff.
authentic to one specific area.
David, bear in mind people are having breakfast here. What's the worst Chinese meal you've ever had?
It's a place in Fargo, North Dakota, where
of course,
and one dish that is almost impossible to mess up is fried rice. and this restaurant, they messed it up, and I don't think they fried the rice. I think they took boiled rice and poured soy sauce over it.
Fair enough. You must have eaten a fair few fortune cookies in your time. Can you remember some of the great fortunes that you've received at the end of a meal?
The best one was that during the period of time when Donald Trump was having economic difficulties, and I opened up the fortune cookie and it says, "Be nice to the Carvelet, it's Donald Trump."
Funny. Now, I get the same fortune every time.
What is it?
This insert has a protective coating.
Oh, stop it. David, listen, if you ever come to Sydney, I'm going to take you to Kenzo Peking. It is the best.
Yeah, Kenzo.
The best in Sydney. Love it.
I'm looking forward to that. You know, I've always wanted to go. I've always wanted to go to Australia, so this is the next best thing.
Come on down.
Research purposes.
And I love it that you're in your 60s and you still can't use chopsticks. That will make my father feel much better today. I give him
I have bad hands. I didn't learn how to hold the pencil correctly. You're supposed to hold the pencil the same way you hold chopsticks. First grade teacher tried to change the way I was writing, and she failed. So because of that, I can't use chopsticks.
Your chopstick grip.
and not only that, it hurts. Yes,
All right,
it hurts
David,
me to write.
You're
Good
fabulous.
on you.
Yeah, good on you.
Terrific. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to having a look at the book.